there was always this delicate balance between programming and sales. It's like decisions were made taking both into consideration. The sales department, from the programming side, always looked like it was trying to give the farm away and make us do stupid things that was going to ruin the sound of the station. We'd try to maintain the integrity of the programming under the assumption that by being the best at what we do, you're going to make money selling us.
And that's the voice of radio disc jockey and program director John Fox. Last time we were talking about some of his favorite moments in radio, including this promotion for the opening of the 241 toll road, in which he got to ride down that freeway, drive down that freeway before it opened, going up to 200 miles per hour. Now, John, how long did it take you to get up to 200 miles an hour?
Well, it took several miles because we couldn't really open full on right away. We had to get to the point where, we had the clearest, flattest piece of road to use. So I think it was a total run of maybe somewhere between 8 and 9 miles. And we hit the peak right about the middle of it.
Wow. Talking about an adrenaline rush, man, that just...
Yeah, it really was. There was definitely adrenaline pumping, more so than with the Blue Angels, surprisingly.
Mm-hmm.
But the Blue Angels was their own special kind of thrill.
Oh, yeah.
That was mainly learning how to stay conscious under multiple Gs. Was it? I think it was Top Gun, the Top Gun sequel.
Mm-hmm.
I was noticing did a really, really good job of showing you what it's like under, 6, 8, 9 Gs or more. And, where you get tunnel vision and the color starts to drain away. They showed that in the movie. It was a very accurate depiction of what actually happens.
Wow. And Top Gun took place in San Diego, the original one. How often did you visit the Kansas City barbecue where that famous scene took place in the film?
I've been there once or twice, not really too much. I was going to mention KEZY Geegan, who was actually, I'm not sure if he was the main instructor, but he was one of the head honchos at Top Gun. He was actually dating one of the other DJs at B100 at the time.
Wow. And after KEZY, it said that this is LARadio.com. You left radio for 10 years to make some real money as fleet sales manager at Rio Rancho Buick Pontiac, GMC in Pomona, and later Simpson Buick GMC in Buena Park. I remember Dave Hull, the Hullabaloo, one time said your worst day in radio is still better than your best day in real estate. Was that how true of that was as a car dealer?
Bingo. Yep, absolutely true. I wouldn't say I hated my job, but I couldn't wait to get back to radio when there was something that actually would pay the bills. The reason I got out was because KEZY ended. I had part-time work at KFWB. That wasn't paying the bills. Just to keep my hand in it, I was doing part-time. I did have once a week for sure, and then some fill-in at KOLA in San Bernardino.
Oh, yeah.
And I was doing my show on KCBQ just for free, for fun. No, actually, I think they did have to pay me minimum wage just to make it legal. But, yeah, I was doing all three of those. And one day, due to scheduling, I ended up having to do all three in the same day.
Oh, man.
And I, got up at 2 a.m. to make it to KFWB by 4. Did a full shift there, full 8-hour shift. Rushed over to KOLA to be, which is 60 miles, 70 miles. And to make a 2 o'clock shift. And when that was over, I had to blast straight down to San Diego to get on KCBQ. And got home around 2 a.m.
Oh, goodness.
And all that, and I wasn't making a living. So I just said, that's it. Got to stop. So I ended up selling cars. The general manager of the place interviewed me and said, you have absolutely no experience. Why would you think you can do this? I said, because I can talk to people. Because I communicate. It's been my job for 30 years. And, 25 at the time, maybe. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, give it a try. My first year there, I was top salesman at the dealership.
Wow.
And they made me fleet manager. And that's where the real money is. Not that I ever got rich doing. I mean, the real money is in management. But, mm-hmm. Fleet manager is better than working the line. And that particular dealership, their general manager died of cancer. Unfortunately, a really nice guy. But they never really quite recovered from that. It kind of ended up in decline. That's why I ended up moving to Buena Park. Mm. And one of the reasons I moved to Buena Park was they had a second store in Yorba Linda at the time, which was like 5 miles from my house. So, that was kind of nice for a little while until that closed. I ended up working in Buena Park for a couple of years. And I never got rich, but it certainly paid the bills and was more money than I ever made in radio, which, KEZY, like I said, it was fun, or I wouldn't have ended up staying there so long because they never did pay that well, certainly not considering you were an LA signal. Mm-hmm. But, I never did make it any further in the Big Orange.
And then,
so like I said, that was deregulation happened in '93, just after I started KEZY, and the whole industry started going downhill.
Yeah, it's funny. People. Go ahead.
No, that's all right. Go ahead.
People, blame the repeal of the Fairness Doctrine. I blame more the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which allows one company to own up to 8 radio stations in one market. I call it the bipartisan one because it really was bipartisan. And it was just like, dude, what are you thinking?
Well, what it did was, traditionally, all through the 70s and pretty much the 80s, there was always this delicate balance between programming and sales. It's like decisions were made taking both into consideration, okay? The sales department from the programming side always looked like it was trying to give the farm away and make us do stupid things that was going to ruin the sound of the station. We'd try to maintain the integrity of the programming and, under the assumption that by being the best at what we do, you're going to make money selling us. But deregulation ruined all that. It turned it into strictly business. And that's, you talked about KFMB trying to cut back on expenses. That was about that same time. And, everybody has suffered for it. Granted, new technology has come in that younger people in particular embrace, think it's better. In some ways it is. As far as emergency communications, which is what, Apollo Res Radio 91.3 KPRI is all about, mm-hmm. and why it was created, there are still things that no amount of tech is going to cover that broadcast can't do better, at least not currently. But, the whole industry has suffered because of competition from new tech and mismanagement and consolidation and profit-taking. What was it? What was the LA station sold several years ago for I think 10 or 20 years ago, probably more like 20 at least. Mm-hmm. It had sold for, I think, $120 million.
I think what I know you're talking about, I believe it's 100.3.
I think it is. Yeah.
Radio One purchased that for $400 million from
mm-hmm.
Clear Channel when they had to divest of some stations, including 95.9, which by that time was KXMX. Salem bought KXMX 95.9, became KFSH The Fish, which it is to this day. Radio One bought 100.3 for $400 million, and it did really well. They put Steve Harvey in the morning with a local show, but then 2 years later, they gave Harvey national syndication. And when they did that, the ratings took a nosedive because it no longer had that local LA community feel to it. Then they tried John Sally in the morning, Tom Joyner, who previously had been on the beat 10 years earlier. But even though Tom Joyner's been successful in the South as well as the East Coast, he just could never crack the West Coast for some reason. And again, he failed in that regard. They put Cliff Winston, who had been on Stevie Wonder's B1, what's KGLH station, which Wonder still owns. Then in 2007, early 2008, Radio 1 was losing money, so they had to divest, and they sold it to Bonneville Broadcasting for about $183 million. And then became The Sound, which was originally AAA, but then it became classic rock. It had Mark Thompson from the Mark and Brian Show for a while, Andy Chanley. I think that Uncle Joe Benson was on there, Cynthia Fox. A bunch of former Cami T and KLOS DJs were on there. And people loved it, but then Entercom made a swap with Bonneville sometime in the ownership, and then Entercom bought CBS Radio, and again, they own too many stations, so they sold it to EMF, which runs the Christian soft rock adult contemporary K-Love network, and I think they sold it for about $50 million, the 100.3 signal, not just 100.3 FM, but three other medium market signals were part of that $53 million package. So I thought my jaw just dropped thinking about going from $400 million to just 17 years later, only $50 million.
Right, exactly. Now, you obviously have got a much better grasp of LA history than I do, particularly during that decade I wasn't in radio. But yeah, that's exactly what I was referring to. And there's parallels everywhere. KFMB was valued at over 90, possibly as much as 100 million, the combo. Just the radio stations, the two radio stations. They finally, when Midwest finally sold it, they sold them for about $5 million.
Oh my goodness! I'm glad I wasn't drinking anything. Otherwise, I was spit it out. Just the thought of that. Well, 77 WABC New York a couple of years ago, Cumulus Broadcasting sold it for I think about $12 million, a 50,000 watt clear channel non-directional AM. For just $12 million in the country's largest market.
That's a combination of AM dying off and just the general market conditions. But yeah, it's a great example.
Now, after we did our interview, John emailed me some names that he couldn't recall during the interview, but was able to recall afterwards. The owner and general manager of KMLO, where he started at AM 1000, was named Gene Alfred. And also at KFMB 760, the guy who replaced Don Burns, that's Berns, not to be confused with Don Burns, who is on 94.7 The Wave in Los Angeles, was actually another Los Angeles radio personality, and that was Perry Allen. And Perry Allen was known in the early 60s as having been mornings on 1110 KRLA. And Allen was somebody who, it was an interesting situation. He didn't like rock and roll. And then on KHJ 930, which was middle of the road, he had Wink Martindale Morning Drive. And he wasn't exactly crazy about the middle of the road stuff at the time. So what they did was KHJ and KRLA did a swap of their morning personalities. Perry Allen went to KHJ, Radio 93, and Wink Martindale to 1110 KRLA. And next time, John's going to talk to us about 91.3 KPRI, which is located online at resradio.fm. That's resradio.fm. He's going to discuss this full-service radio station serving the Pala Indian Reservation as well as the areas around it. It's a fascinating story as well as some fascinating programs. We'll discuss those next time.